Hey, it's one of the most well-written movies, I think, of the last 20 years, and very well directed and very well acted. Added bonus, it's short, 78-minute runtime. You could fit it into your busy schedule. It's the movie The Squid and the Whale by the writer-director Noah Baumbach. Let's take a look at why I think this movie is great, and if you haven't seen it, why I think you'd really appreciate it, coming up next. The Squid and the Whale is about a family of four in 1986 Brooklyn. It stars Jeff Daniels as the father, Laura Linney as the mother, and you also have Jesse Eisenberg as the older boy, Walt. And here he's in a role that precedes his role in The Social Network, and you'll see a relationship between his character of Zuckerberg in The Social Network and in this movie as a young teenager. The parents in this movie are literati. That is, the father is a famous novelist and a college professor who teaches writing, and the mother is a budding writer as well. She's becoming a professional writer, well-respected and well-paid. But very quickly in the movie, the mother and father separate. And this is a divorce movie. It's a separation movie. The two boys, of course, are devastated, and there are some terrible effects on these two young men.
Yeah. Mom and I are going... We're going to separate.
You're not going to be leaving either of us.
We're going to have joint custody. Frank, it's okay. I've got an elegant new house across the park.
Across the park? Is that even Brooklyn?
It's only 5 stops on the subway. It's an elegant block, the fillet of the neighborhood. We'll have a ping pong table.
I don't play ping pong.
One of the boys, the younger brother, descends. He becomes decadent, and he starts to drink beer, to swear, use swear words a lot, and he does a number of other terrible and racy things that are partly funny. This is a dark comedy, but are partly sad. This is a heartfelt drama as well. And that's one reason I really like this movie, is it really combines in a way I can't really think of another movie that does this offhand. Dark comedy humor that's satirical, satirizes these characters a little bit, but also more so even than that, heartfelt drama, and you feel and you empathize, especially with the two boys. Jeff Daniels in this movie plays a very smart, a very well-read, a man who loves tennis a lot, but he is self-centered and self-absorbed in subtle ways, but he has great influence on these boys, and you see him as narcissistic. He lies, but you have to detect his lies. You have to look carefully at what he's lying about. And clearly he's a man who has some great attraction to these young boys who want to be, especially the older boy, Walt. And that's one of the major ideas or storylines of this movie, that the boy Walt, played by Jesse Eisenberg, wants to imitate his great father, a man he looks up to. But the father is very self-absorbed, and Jeff Daniels does very great work in this movie. A wonderful performance. I think he was nominated for an Academy Award for this movie. And so the movie is, in large part, several scenes where you just see the family disintegrate, fall apart, and deal with the separation. It may seem like I'm underplaying the movie, but I think you just need to watch it to see that every single scene in this movie does these things. It's amazing that it does this. First, it advances the plot, each scene in the movie does. Second, it complicates each character. And third, it complicates the relationships between the characters. Rarely are you going to see a movie where every single moment in the movie is doing all three of those things at the same time. That makes this movie, by the end, after 78 minutes, a very rich movie, and certainly much richer than most of the 2.5 hour dramas you could watch from any part in movie history. In fact, the movie opens announcing that it's about the relationships between these four family members and how they are divided and playing games with each other. The opening shot is with them playing tennis against each other. And if you have to rewatch the movie to see this, but the teams are unfair. It has the two men in the movie, the father and then the older son, playing against the mother and the little kid, who we come to learn is not that great at tennis. He's trying to learn, but it's hard to tell if he really wants to learn. And so these two men are trying to win against these, weaker, at least physically, opponents, the mother. And so you see the father is at odds with the mother. The older boy is going to be at odds with the younger brother. These themes are announced very quickly. The sides in the family, the mother and the younger son, are going to appreciate each other a little bit more. The father and the older son are going to pair up. But this movie has, because it has these four rich characters, 6 different sort of pair relationships, the father and the mother, the father and the older son, the father and the younger son, and so on. You can go throughout the family and pair them up, and each of those relationships is rich and rewarding. You can watch this movie focusing on only one relationship and get a heck of a lot out of this movie, and you can watch it 6 times, and it's really rich and that interesting. So I highly recommend it for it, how great the writing is in this movie, and really actually how funny this movie is.
I hate Nastasi. You know that. Ivan met Nastasi and said he was an asshole.
Well, I couldn't find Vitas Gerolitis.
I have a Vitas poster at home. At Mom's. And all my turtles.
We can get you some turtles. I know you like the amphibians.
Turtles are reptiles.
Here's a desk for you to do your homework.
Dad, this is for a lefty.
I want to focus then in my analysis section on one of the characters who, as you'll see, by the end of the movie is a focal point. The writer-director Noah Baumbach, this is quasi-autobiographical. It's about him as a teenager. So I think once you get to the end, you'll see that Walt, the older teenage son, is a focal point of the movie. Now, when I first watched the movie, I really didn't notice that. I thought the father was the main focal point. Jeff Daniels' performance, and Laura Linney is the mother as well. But by the end, you see this is a story about Walt. At least you could watch it that way. And so let's go into a little bit of analysis about Walt as a character.
Hey you, don't tell me there's no hope at all. Together we stand, divided we fall.
Terrific, honeys.
Well, did you write that song?
Yes. Yeah, I signed up for the talent thing they have at school.
Great. Just make sure you practice a lot.
Mom, I'll be fine.
Just remember, you're going to be in front of a lot of people.
Mom, don't ruin the whole thing for me.
You'll win. And if you don't win, something's wrong with them, which is probably the case, actually. People can be very stupid.
One of the funniest jokes to me in this movie is that Walt plays the Pink Floyd song Hey You. He does it for his high school talent show. He plays it first for his mother and father, and he tries to put it off as if he himself wrote it. And it's as if nobody in 1986 Brooklyn has ever heard of Pink Floyd. It's a great running gag in this movie. But it's also sad because, Walt is trying to impress people. That's what he's out to do, be like his father. He's trying to impress his father as a writer. And so then to pretend, well, I'm Roger Waters and I can write as great as he does, is funny but sad, and that captures Walt's character very well. Also featured in this movie is sort of the budding sexuality of these 2 young men, and I think sadly for the younger son, too early, and he's too into sexual matters. Now, that might just be my Midwestern past talking, my Midwestern background. Maybe New York City or people are wildly open about sex. I don't know. Walt is interested in sex and girls, but he sees his father, who is divorced 3 times at this point, and is hitting on one of his students. He sees his father doing it, and then he thinks, well, I can do that. And his father actually tells him, son, you should play the field. Well, you see that this Walt character is badly influenced in ways. He doesn't relate to women well at all in this movie, and he tries to win them over with, I think, narcissistic means.
Do you like someone else? Your dad's girlfriend?
No. No, why? No, and she's not his girlfriend.
My father said you had a weak handshake, which is a sign of indecision.
His hands are so huge, I can't get a good grip.
And my mother said you don't have a very good model for relationships because of your parents.
What?
Now, the end of this movie, spoiler alert, let's talk about this. And by the way, if you haven't seen the movie, this might actually help you out, help you figure a little bit of it out. The title is The Squid and the Whale, and that ends up being the last shot or last couple of shots in the movie is Walt going to an aquarium to see a squid and a whale entangled. These aren't real sea creatures. They're actually just props or like giant images of a squid and a whale. But Walt, as a child, was haunted by that, seeing that in an aquarium. He couldn't look at it. He tells this story to a therapist about 2/3 of the way through the movie, and he goes back home with his mother, and his mother tells him to, forget it. And she talks to him about this image of the squid and the whale, where he says, it was okay. At that point, I liked to hear the story about the squid and the whale, but I didn't want to look at it. So the theme and the climax of this movie is him going by himself to confront that image that haunted him from his childhood. And leaving his father behind. There's a couple great shots of Walt holding his father's hand and then the hand coming out of his father, which is a symbol that Walt is breaking away from his father, obviously, and he's going to go be brave and courageous and confront his past terrors, and to go see that image for himself of the squid and the whale. Now, what did the squid and the whale signify? I think probably 100 different things. One of them surely is the sexual tension in this movie between, and forgive me for bringing this up, but the penis and the vagina. There's a lot of talk about vaginas in this movie. At one point, a student is writing about her vagina, and the father, the Jeff Daniels character, praises her for it, and there's a lot of talk about that. The fights between male and female, obviously the penis and vagina being entangled there, but also the sexual confusion that these two boys have. You know, the younger boy is masturbating in school and spreading his semen all over the school, which is just plain weird to me, but, you know, it makes sense given his, devastation at the separation of his parents. But the sort of tension and not knowing what sex is and being, having it talked about openly by the parents, but being confused because, your mother is sleeping with her boyfriend and cheating on your dad's after a young student. All of these things come up in the movie, and the boys are looking at their parents going, these people are really screwed up, and sex in particular, and their problems with adultery and so on have really screwed them up, and by extension, they screwed us up. So I think that's one of the things that the squid and the whale by the end signifies, and Walt has to confront that directly and see it for himself and see all the problems with it. And note that the squid and the whale, they would be submerged underwater in the ocean. That's a metaphor, obviously, for, the things submerged within the conscious self, things you're not aware of, the unconsciousness and the wrestling and the entanglements of giant monstrous problems you have. Obviously, I think that's obvious. That's what's going on with Walt when he confronts that image in the end. Another thing going on, and this is interesting to think about if you've ever read Franz Kafka, who comes up in this movie a lot, is the story of the Metamorphosis, where a young man turns into, as you know, a bug in the very first line of the story. This movie is Kafkaesque in this sense, that Walt is always confronting his need to imitate his father, and really to be that sort of bug-like character who's used and abused and he has no future, and he's not sure who he is. And here at the end, he's confronting the monsters. He himself is a monster and doesn't know it, or his father's a monster and doesn't know it. And he's got to confront them, wrestling image-wise with the squid and the whale at the end of the movie. I think the symbol of the hand coming apart is a very deliberate cuts to the father, holding the father's hand when he's in the hospital, and then the hand breaking apart are also squid and whale-like. That is, the father, the whale, maybe, has entangled Walt in his world. He's a big center of gravity, and Walt is orbiting around him and can't get out of it, and doesn't want to. He wants to imitate his father, but by the end, breaking away. Maybe that's what the squid is trying to do in the image of the squid and the whale, the squid getting away from the whale. So for all the reasons that this is rich and complex and very interesting characters, and you just don't see that too much in film, unfortunately, I highly recommend The Squid and the Whale to you. Have you seen this movie? What do you think about my interpretations? Do you have your own? What did you think about the characters? Who did you focus on? Please let us know in the comments. I just love to hear from you all because I think there's so much more to say about this movie. And please subscribe to my channel for more great movie content. Thank you and have a great day.